It's truly amazing how many, quote, experts there are out there. Definitely air quoting that one. On a variety of subjects, often that the people in question know little to nothing, precious little to nothing about. This happens quite a lot, it turns out. By the way, I did start reading the notes for this yesterday, so if you'll notice, you'll actually find out that the notes that I started yesterday were in fact ones for today, but the only way you'll notice is by virtue of the fact that it starts in the same way. In any case, I wanted to sort of talk about one of the things that a lot of people proclaim themselves experts on, and that is QAnon. Subject of today's daily summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. By the way, I'm your host. I'm Kurt. Glad to have you aboard today. Thank you for coming here on Rumble, on YouTube, and on the podcast. And again, the subject is QAnon. That's what we're going to talk about today. And I'm going to talk about them from maybe a perspective that you're not really all that much expecting. I try to keep very much up on a lot. Oh, by the way, in case I didn't say it, today is Wednesday, the 16th of June of 2021. Just to set the stage on where we are. I try to keep abreast of a lot of what's going on, but there are some things that I just don't care about. They don't bother me or interest me, and part of the reason is that they seem at best insignificant. It's not like they've got people rolling around. So for example, QAnon is an excellent example. It's not like they got people roaming the streets like Black Lives Matter and Antifa do, right? So for the most part, I just don't worry about QAnon. Now, I'm not saying there's not some point at which they could become a dangerous or problematic entity, but at this point they certainly do not seem to be that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and read my notes real quick so you have a pretty good idea where I stand. Can I tell you a secret? Until people I don't consider know much of anything about politics started making statements and petitions against QAnon, I didn't really pay them, either the people doing so or QAnon, any mind. Mostly what they have to say, this is about QAnon, does not end up being put out to a large part of the populace. Not very many people hear it. And that's true for the other folks too, by the way. But the point is, this is what we're talking about is QAnon, so that's what you should assume I'm talking about there. Let's be clear. My present attitude is I'm not going to join them anytime soon, if at all, if ever. Right? I'm not doing that. That said, as with many other such movements, where some things published under their banner are just plain nonsense, I'm sure, you can find folks saying things that are totally reasonable under the organization. In fact, I find I have more reasonable to back QAnon than those speaking against them by and large. Again, that doesn't mean I'll start accepting and believing everything they say. Not going to happen. By the way, not going to happen for the Republican Party. Not going to happen for the Libertarians. That said, when you talk against an organization like QAnon, and I've got organization in quotes because I'm not sure how much of an organization they actually are, you should consider that you're actually causing thinking people to take the time to look at them. That's especially true if your political positions are ones with whom those hearing you do not agree. It's even more true if they look at you as someone who pays attention to things like politics when they supposedly directly affect you, are politically more or less completely and willfully ignorant. That is, you are. All right. Don't want QAnon to gain followers, or at least mild supporters? Stop talking about them. I believe that's the end of my notes. Yep, that's the end of my notes. That's what I thought. I did a lot of notes today, which is not super common for me, but here we are. But here's the thing. Somebody that I saw stuff from, a couple of people that I saw stuff from on social media, who basically have no knowledge at all as far as I can tell politically. They forgive me for saying so, they voted for Joe Biden. That pretty much makes my case. I don't really need to say anything more than that. Started recently talking about signing some petition to ban an event that QAnon was putting on. Look, I don't know anything about QAnon by and large, and I'll be the first to tell you because this is my way of doing business. I don't sit around looking at or talking about things most of the time that I know about unless I'm telling you that I don't know about them. Okay? But here's what happened. Here's what happened in this chain of events. a couple of people posted something trying to ban QAnon from doing stuff in their local area. First of all, they went to change.org and did a petition, which is like, really? Really? No, that's not worth anything. Second of all, in fact, I talked about that yesterday, as you're aware. Second of all, the people in question never said anything that they were against that they said that QAnon was for. Never. Didn't say a word about that. Just put something out there that everybody else was supposed to follow, lockstep behind them in supporting, because they didn't like what those people were doing and saying. Or they don't think they like what those people are doing or saying. Everything I know says that they don't have any idea what they're talking about, and actually, for the most part, the group is reasonable. But here's what happened. So they did that. So my next thing was to say, I've been meaning to take some time to look into QAnon, see who they are, what are they about. I really have no idea. I'm not trying to say they're great. I'm not trying to say they're horrible. I'm simply saying I don't know. And that's just not that complicated a thing, you'll forgive me for saying. It's just not that complicated. So anyway, so I went looking, and the very first few things that I found from QAnon that were not places like Wikipedia and so forth, where you can't really trust what they're saying, the very first 2 or 3 things that I found were totally reasonable presentations. They weren't anything even outlandish. They were just stuff that maybe just pretty much anybody would have said. Don't get me wrong. I'm quite sure that there's some stuff out there under QAnon, just based on what I've heard various people that I do trust somewhat to have said, that makes it so that what they say is somewhat questionable, at least in part. But for a large part, a lot of the people, I think, who get involved in things like QAnon believe that they're not being served by the various people, whether it's news media or politicians or who it happens to be, and they go out and they go in search of something that they think better represents who they are. And some of them find QAnon. Again, am I sitting here telling you, oh, I support QAnon wholeheartedly? I'm not even telling you I support QAnon. I'm just telling you that of the things that I have seen them to say, nothing is, or much of it is not problematic at all. And of the stuff that's problematic, nothing I'm aware of is sufficiently problematic to make it so that I would actually concern myself with what they're doing and saying. Now, I hope that this helps you to understand where I am at this point. I'm going to say this again. I literally looked at QAnon because these people started to spout off about it, and I was pretty sure they had no idea what they were talking about. Because in general, they do have no idea what they're talking about. They talk without knowledge all the time. And for at least one of the people in question, I took them on in depth on various things, and in just about every case, they left flat because they had nothing to say to counter what it was that I was saying to them. Nothing. Nothing. And was I being rude or mean? They might have argued that I was, but I wasn't. It's not that I was, whipping them or beating up on them. I was simply using knowledge and logic to come to some conclusions. That's all I was doing, and that's all I tried to get them to do. But of course they refused to do it. Now that wasn't on the subject of QAnon because, as I say, I never really looked at QAnon before. I don't know anything about them, but that was enough to cause me to actually take the time to look and come to understand in some measure, basically who QAnon was. So that's what I did. And my understanding at this point is it's a big yawner. I don't even think I care what QAnon has to say for the most part. But for the little bit that they did have to say that I actually looked at, I generally agreed with it. And it wasn't even controversial. Okay? So when you sit there talking about doing something like banning an entity like QAnon from speaking in your local area, maybe you should be looking at the KKK instead. Not that I think there's a whole lot of that left in the United States. I think it exists, and it's unfortunate that it does, and it needs to go away. But the fact of the matter is, it's way more significant than something like QAnon, in my opinion, in my viewpoint. All right, I need to go ahead and wrap up now. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. This is the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I'm your host. I'm Kurt. Today is Wednesday, the 16th of June of 2021. That means tomorrow will be Thursday, the 17th of June of 2021. Thank you for everyone who's been here on Rumble on the podcast, on YouTube. Remember, Rumble is my preferred platform. And you can give me a positive Rumble or a negative one on Rumble. You can give me a like or a dislike, a thumbs up or a thumbs down on YouTube. Remember that you can comment on both of those platforms to tell me if things that I have right or agree with me or whatever you happen to do. Have wrong, I should say. If I said have right. Have wrong or that you agree with me on or whatever you happen to want to do. Today's subject has been QAnon. Tomorrow we're going to talk about some financial advice, something they tell you you should never give anybody, and I'm going to give you just a little bit of financial advice tomorrow, and it's just going to knock your socks off. Maybe not, but anyway, you'll see, and hopefully it'll be something that will be worth your paying attention to. I hope you're having a good day today. Today is that hump day, Wednesday, and hopefully we will see you again on tomorrow's edition of the Daily Summation. The speaker on this edition of the Daily Summation is Kurt Schubert. This video is recorded on Wednesday, the 16th of June, 2021. The Daily Summation is created for Kurt's Religion and Politics. Thanks for watching this edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I hope you found it entertaining or instructional, or maybe both. If you want to see more from me, you can go to blogs.kpschubert.com. That's blogs.kpschubert.com. I am on Twitter, Parler, and Minds.com. My handle on each of those is @kpschubert. That's @kpschubert. I have a Rumble and a YouTube channel. They are the Kurt's Religion and Politics channels on Rumble and YouTube. I have a Facebook page. The Facebook page is Kurt's Religion and Politics as well. I am on Patreon. If you want to support me, that's one of the better places you can do that. And you will find me at Kurt's Religion and Politics on Patreon. I have a podcast. The podcast is podcasts with an S, .kpschubert.com. That's podcasts.kpschubert.com. I think you should be able to find me with relative ease on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify as well. The best way I find to do that is to look for Kurt's Religion and Politics. You can try to use the Daily Summation. I find that it doesn't work as well as a general rule, but you can always try that. I'm glad to have you aboard today, and hopefully we will see you again tomorrow.